Photogrammetry, an increasingly refined and effective technique to record and save, with the help of the lens, our environmental heritage. Experts and scholars from various Italian universities discussed it in Bari.
A UNESCO estimate attributes to Italy 40% of the cultural heritage accumulated by centuries of history on the planet. How this percentage evaluation is reached, very gratifying for our country, it is not known. However, it is certain that in Italy there is no precise and reliable census of cultural heritage. It doesn't exist in Italy, it doesn't exist region by region. In Puglia there is a project, still in its initial state, and is to create a regional center for the documentation of cultural heritage. How this center should be organized is not yet clear. Some ideas, however, begin to circulate. Participants in the Conference on Photogrammetry and Project, promoted in recent days in Bari, by the Chair of Architectural Photogrammetry of the Engineering Faculty, and coordinated by Professor Antonio De Dabbo, listened to a few. What provides, for example, not a cadaster of cultural heritage, but a real image bank of the same, made with the photogrammetric technique. A technique that allows the measurement of any object, through a particular analysis of its photographic image. The idea is good. Among other things, any correct restoration of cultural heritage should be based on a meticulous analysis of the same. Something that has not always happened, precisely due to the absence of adequate photo libraries. However, there are no operators for this type of intervention. Hence the practical purpose of the conference. Involve the school, the public one, but also the private professional institutes, in the training of technicians specialized in the treatment of images.
20 years have passed since the signing of the University of Bari and the Puglia region for the Municipality of Photogrammetric Electronic Equipment. 20 years are many and many things have changed, but before daring a particular account of the results of the research carried out in these 20 years, I think it would be appropriate to stop a little to look at what the changes in the means have been. This position in these years, I would start with the media. At the time, the DVD, which we are seeing, was inconceivable. Indeed, it was not really thought that it could exist. The most accessible audio-visual system was the videotape, even if it was very easy to make it in the shooting phase, presenting problems with regards to editing. Perhaps, compared to the old Super 8 movie, the videotape had taken a step back. In fact, while with the Super 8, it was enough to buy a slow motion to edit the various videos. With the videotape, or the video recorder was used, with fearful and often unacceptable cuts, or specialized films had to be used, because the cost of the video editing equipment was inaccessible. Our videotapes, made in 1985, were made by a sponsor company. Today, we could say that all these problems have been overcome. The fact itself, which I am videotaping on a fairly inexpensive medium, we can say at no cost, compared to the old Super 8 films, which at the time cost 8,000 lire for only 3 minutes of shooting. Today the DVD goes on 2 or 3 euros and they seem quite pushed prices. For the rest, everything can be recycled. Apart from the purchase cost of the equipment, nothing is consumed for operation. The camera can also record 1,000 times, on the same tape, various subjects. Let's say that, today, a teacher could easily videotape their lessons and make them available to students, just as, at my time, he made notes on mimeographs available, which, today, have been replaced by photocopies. We will return to this later, but we come to the didactic role of the documentation center, which the center itself will have to play in the initial phase. We will come back to this later. But let's get to the didactic role of the documentation center that the center itself will have to carry out in the initial phase.
The research program, attached to the agreement. It allows a glimpse of a structure open to any technological innovation. The cultural asset, understood in the broadest sense of the word, can be detected in a very short time, from general to particular. In the laboratory it can be analyzed, dismembered into its fundamental elements and cataloged. The architect-urban planner will be able to design his own intervention, no longer on the white sheet of paper, but on updated photographic surveys of the territorial reality. The idea of a geostationary satellite, intended to provide, in real time, any information on the transformations of reality territorial, should not arouse skepticism. But for all this to be possible, some dogmas need to be reviewed, starting with the survey and the building design. What is meant by relief? A graphic image, a three-dimensional photographic image in the desired but static scale? What is meant by relief? A graphic image, a three-dimensional photographic image in the desired but static scale?
You have seen that in the television service. There was talk of a documentation center. At the time, let's say that it was thought to create a sort of library with a catalog where everyone could trace the cultural asset of their interest and could view photographs or videotapes. The photographs were then analyzed either in the photo interpretation sector or in the photo restitution sector for those who needed graphics or other information. For videotapes, a large screen projection room was available for collective use. Let's think a little about a group of students or tourists, or they could be viewed on a single monitor. For videotapes, a large screen projection room was available for collective use. Let's think a little about a group of students or tourists, or they could be viewed on a single monitor. As early as '96, this concept of documentation center appeared largely outdated with the arrival of the Internet. Today, we have the opportunity to connect from home with the documentation center. Select the cultural asset that interests us. We can choose from the photogrammetric catalog, which offers us stereometric images that we can view from home, or we can read HTML pages or other types of videos, which we can always consult from home. All this has led to the disruption of the project. While at the time, it was thought to build the documentation center in the Santa Scholastica complex, which even seemed insufficient, because spaces accessible to all were required, with a huge waste of energy and also of funds. Do you think that the photogrammetric restituta, existing in the complex of Santa Scholastica, cost 100 million lire? Then there were two more, with respective costs of 300 and 600 million. Let's say that, at a cost of 1 billion lire, at most 3 people could be satisfied, who, in order to make a return, needed a long time. Without speaking, then, of the spaces which these instruments occupied. Just look at the photogrammetric restitutor of Santa Scholastica, since he would have occupied this whole room. And let's say that already with the passage of '96, Santa Scholastica, to be insufficient for the spaces, was overabundant, with a big waste of spaces. Besides the security problems,